Hello everyone, my name is Brendan Snyder. Thank you so much for joining me and welcome to a special review for the brand new Scorpions album, Rock Believer, 19th studio album from the German rockers, and first in 7 years. It's the longest gap between studio albums from them. Just released on Friday, February 25th of 2022. And before we dive into that, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please click the button. Also leave a comment, hit like. All those things help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by subscribing, you'll be able to stay up to date on all that's going on in the world of music, just like this, with a review of the brand new Scorpions album, Rock Believer. So a little bit of history here, some context on the band itself. They formed way back in 1965, which not a lot of people know about, although they didn't release their debut album, Lonesome Crow, until 1972. And with this year being 2022, it is the 50th anniversary of that album, of their first debut recording coming out. And the band itself still features two original members, Klaus Meine on vocals and Rudolf Schenker on guitar. And then since 1978, second guitarist Mathis Jabs has been with the band, so that core lineup has recorded every subsequent album going forward, and so they're still together today. And the band then is currently rounded out by newer members, Pavel Makavoda, apologize if I'm saying his last name wrong there, but he's on bass, and Mikkey Dee on drums, coming from Motorhead, so that's pretty cool having him in the lineup now. Over the career, the band has played through many different eras of rock, making each style their own. And so they've played through, of course, hard rock of the 70s into the early 80s, heavy metal, and then through the glam metal of the late 80s into the early 90s and so forth. And in all, the band itself has released 19 studio albums of original material, including Blackout in 1982, which features one of my favorite songs, No One Like You, Love at First Sting in 1984, which of course features the all-time classic Rock You Like a Hurricane, and Crazy World in 1990, which features the mega power ballad Wind of Change. And they're estimated to have sold over 100 million albums worldwide, which is no small feat in and of itself. And while the band itself did consider retiring in 2012, they did release their 17th studio album, Sting in the Tail, thought about making a retirement there, went out on a farewell tour, but thank goodness for us fans they chose not to, because here we are now a decade later with the release of their brand new 19th studio album, Rock Believer. So really glad they chose to stick around here. And now we're going to talk about the album itself. So as I mentioned, first one in 7 years, making it the longest gap between albums. Also the first album to feature Mikkey Dee on drums. The album sessions itself started back in 2019, but of course slowed down in 2020 due to the onset of the pandemic. And of course the band found it very hard to work via Zoom. So they ultimately decided to wait until they could get into the studio, record as a band the old way that they used to do it, all together in one room. And so that in and of itself has actually given the album a bit of a different sound, in my opinion, a more live, straight ahead rock sound than some of their other albums that can tend to be overproduced and whatnot. And in difference to their last album, Return to Forever from 2015, that album was made up of both old and new songs, and it also featured on a number of those new songs outside writers. Rock Believer, on the other hand, features 15 new original songs on it, all written by the band, with only 2 of the songs featuring co-writes on them. The 2 co-writes feature Greg Fidelman on it, which is most notable, or he's most notable for working with Metallica, but he was also the original lead guitarist in the late 80s, early 90s band Rhino Bucket. So if you're familiar with those guys, he co-wrote 2 of the tracks on here. He actually started out originally producing this album, but when things didn't work out well through Zoom, the band moved on separately. And so the core album itself features 11 tracks on it, with the deluxe edition, which is the one I've got here, and we'll talk a little bit more about what makes that the deluxe one, but it features 16 tracks on it. And so album opener, Gas in the Tank, kicks things off right, in my opinion, with really big over-the-top, sound, guitars, and everything on it, just like you want from an opening track on a Scorpions album. And with both Klaus and Rudolf being 73 years old, it's amazing that they've got about as much energy as they're putting into not only that one track, but the rest of the album on here. And there's a number of straight ahead rockers that I think really generated out of that live recording as a band in the studio kind of a atmosphere that are tailor-made to playing live, which will really come across great when they tour for this album. Roots in My Boots and Knock 'Em Dead, both of those songs on here, really good straight ahead rockers. But the title track, Rock Believer, on here I think is one of the best songs on the album, with its classic lead guitar melody that's on it. Something that I found was used very sort of sparingly on this album, not very characteristic of the way other albums are done. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But another interesting track on here, Shining of Your Soul, that's one of the ones that features the co-write from Greg Fidelman on it. And then another one on here, track number 7, Hot and Cold, one of my favorite tracks that's on this album, but it's actually second single, Peacemaker, that is probably the album's best track in my opinion. It's definitely the most rockin' track on the album. Interestingly though, there is only one ballad on this album, When You Know Where You Come From. And you know, for a band that is surprisingly known for its ballads and so forth, it's kind of a shocking thing that they would only put one on here. But then again, it's that live in the studio feel that I think had this album have more of a rock feel to it than, say, interspersed with a lot of ballads and so forth. But in traditional fashion, that song is the last one on the album, kind of making a classic thing. They used to do that a lot early on with their albums, and so that's where the song lives on this one. So let's take a look at this. This is the front cover of it. Little perplexed by the album cover. Interesting. It doesn't have a lot to do with the term rock believer in my opinion, and not sure why she is shrouded in red cloth. You do see the scorpion on the inside of her mouth. I almost think it would have been better if she wasn't shrouded in the red and you really could have seen the scorpion. In fact, even having had it be a real scorpion in there, kind of giving it a little sense of, you know, that she's got this thing in her mouth. But cool album nonetheless. There's the back side of it. So you've got all the tracks from both disc 1 and 2, the 16 total tracks making this up, appearing there. There's the spine of it, and this thing opens up like a triple gatefold, which is really cool, and I'll open the rest in a minute, but I did want to show you that great shot of the band there. When we open it up, we get a really cool thing there that says the band, done in a great logo, Rock Believer, right across there. Interesting, the whole black and white fare going along with the red and black on the front of it like that. And then so we've got the booklet in this one here, CD number 1 here, and CD number 2 here, and they just slide out from it. But what I want to show you is the booklet itself. I really like this as the album cover and almost feel like that would have been better, but you do get something different on the inside booklet, so that's kind of cool. Now it's on a really thin sort of paper that's matte, something different. You do get shots of the band and of course lyrics in here. There's Rudolph, but kind of interesting how they chose to do this here. There we go, Mathis in there. More lyrics, of course. And then we get down to, there we go, Pavel and Mickey and the end of it. So we only get, we get this band photo here. We get the one that's on the inside there, and then those individual shots. And I'll just show you what one of these CDs pulling out from the side like this. And so we get, this one is actually the bonus disc of 5 additional tracks along with the standard 11 tracks from the main album itself. So you get a total of 16 that way. Now just sort of bottom line on this album itself, in my opinion, it's a very good album. And all while sounding like a Scorpions album itself, it does have its own feel and sound separate from the other 18 studio albums that the band itself has recorded of their original material. And so in my opinion, they're not trying to retread tread on the past, but they still sound like themselves. And that's quite an accomplishment, to still sound new and fresh, yet retaining the classic elements that make the band so popular. It's not an easy thing to do 57 years into their career, the way that the band is doing. So I would say, do yourself a favor and check out this great album, in my opinion. Very classic band here, the Scorpions, doing something, 50 years on from their debut album in 1972, certainly making this worthwhile to check out. But there you go. That is my review of the brand new Scorpions album, Rock Believer, 19th studio album from the band. And if you've enjoyed this video, certainly consider sharing it out on social media. Help spread the word for the Scorpions and my channel. We would both greatly appreciate it. All right, everyone, take care. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you all real soon. Bye-bye, everyone.